Hi, I'm Detroit City Councilman James Tate, representing District 1, and today we're discussing educating our kids K through 8 during the pandemic. Even though the doors of the school buildings are currently closed, student education is still expected to continue remotely. How will this new reality affect the overall learning process with so many students not having access to proper electronic devices or connectivity and virtual learning serving in the place of in person teaching by qualified educators? And when the school buildings are finally given the green light to once again open for classroom learning, what will be the reaction of parents? Joining us today for a very candid discussion on those topics and so many more concerning coronavirus and education is Principal Melissa Scott of Coleman A. Young Elementary School, Principal Aaron Willis of Detroit Leadership Academy, and parent Shantae Bowles and daughter Reagan, who attends Detroit Edison Elementary School. Take a look. And we are joined today with Miss Melissa Scott, who's the principal of Coleman A. Young Elementary School. Also, Ms. Erin Willis, who is the principal of Detroit Leadership Academy. And we have parent here with Ms. Shantae Bowles and her daughter, Reagan Walker, who attends Edison Elementary. Thank you all for joining us today. How are you all maintaining during this COVID pandemic quarantine situation? We'll start with Principal Willis. How are you and your family maintaining?
So we are actually doing really well over here. We've started to try, I've been doing a lot of trying new healthy recipes, and we've been doing walks around the neighborhood. So that's been something that's really helping us with our just being at home. My husband is also a teacher, so he's home too. So we went from not seeing each other much to seeing each other a whole lot. And so we've tried to make the most of that by doing some of those things that we know will ultimately help us feel better and be better for our students.
Oh, awesome. Principal Scott, how about you and your family?
You know, I live alone. My kids are grown, so it's been really interesting. And so I actually go to the building every day just to get out of my house because I'm alone, and I'm alone there too. So it works out. But you know what? I have actually enjoyed the advantages of the pandemic. There's so much negative going on, but sometimes we forget to talk about some of the advantages. Some of them are: one, I'm eating healthier. I'm doing a lot more exercising. I have purged my house. I have gotten rid of so much stuff. It's ridiculous because I'm trying to find small projects to do. Yeah. But education wise, I go into teams every day and I look at my teachers, and they're having the capability of really working with students and parents individually. So there are some serious advantages education-wise, social-wise. I'm calling a lot more family members, checking in, and we're way more cognizant. I come from a very large family, and so we're way more cognizant about checking in with one another and talking to one another. And I'm getting, technology is not my forte, and so I am learning a lot about Zoom and Teams, and I enjoy that. And I'm reading.
Yeah. So this whole technology piece is new to a lot of us, and it's would be a real part of our ongoing new normal, I'm sure. Ms. Bowles, how about you and Reagan? How are you guys doing during this pandemic?
We're doing pretty well. I got a 10-year-old and I have a 5-year-old. Of course, sometimes those in the house together for a too long a period of time can be like head bumping, but it's been going pretty good. They eat all day, do a lot of reading, playing the game, writing. She does a lot of drawing, and then I'm working from home. So
I'm glad everyone is healthy and doing well, looking well. We're going to get right into it. We know that the state of Michigan indicated that schools were to come up with the distance learning by April 24th. I know DPS came up with theirs, I think it was April 20th. Now that the plans have been rolled out, how are things going? We'll start with Principal Scott.
You know, it was actually amazing how quickly that Dr. Vitti and his team came up with a really good plan. In addition to the technology plan, they also put together homework packets. And so there are a lot of challenges because of the digital divide, obviously. And there's a lot of challenges because some of our new curriculum have vocabulary that's not familiar with parents. And so, but again, there's a lot of advantages to it as well. And so the digital, that's my staff calling right now. I'm so sorry.
No, you're on duty.
It's a new way for us to communicate. And so I want to commend Dr. Vitti and his team for coming up with the package so quickly and with the teams. And so we're learning a lot, but it's full of challenges and advantages.
Yeah. So Principal Wilson, I know you all are not part of DPS, you're a charter school. So you probably have some different types of things that you're doing as it relates to distance learning and interaction with the students. I'm sure some of the same things, but what are you all doing to help educate the children during this pandemic situation?
So being that we're not part of DPS, our schedule was a little bit different from theirs. And so our spring break was actually 1 week earlier. So therefore, we, at that point, right before spring break is when Governor Whitmer imposed the stay home order. So at that point, everyone realized we would be doing this for a long time. So our management company is Equity Education. So the school and Equity partnered with one another, and we actually started our distance learning plan for students on April 13th in its full form. Prior to April 13th, I'm sure DPS was doing the same. We were making wellness calls to families just to check on everyone and make sure that they had what they needed. So what we have done is to holistically make sure that all of our students and families have their needs met. The way that we're doing our food services, we have gleaners at our campus every other week, and then at the high school campus on the opposite week. So DLA families can go to one campus or the other every week to receive free food and groceries that should get them through the week. Then in addition to that, as part of our wellness calls, we make sure that we identify any needs that families have so we can tap into our partners. We're partners with the Department of Health and Human Services, the Pathways to Potential program, as well as Lincoln Behavioral Services. We have an in-house therapist. So if we have things, we also have a school social worker. So if we have things that families need that are not specifically related to academics, we can tap them into the right place to get those going. Now, as far as academics goes, I agree with Principal Scott as far as Equity Education did an amazing job coming up with a plan in a very short time. I think all the time about how quickly this all happened. You know, we made paper packets for our students on March 13th that were adequate for 2 weeks, thinking, you know, we're going to do this for a couple of days, and then we'll all be back here together. None of us, you know, knowing that this was going to be for the remainder of the school year. So we have what my school is doing is we have an online learning every week. Teachers give students lesson plans. The main form of communication with our families is Classroom Dojo. And so each week I post all of the learning plans onto JoJo for parents to get their students' grade level plans. And they're able to access it that way. We don't give out paper packets every week, but if we have parents who are experiencing challenges, then we do provide them with paper packets upon request, and usually either we'll drop them off to their house, mail them, or they can come on the Gleaners Day and pick them up from us. So that's more of, instead of being every week. So that means that we are, and I'm assuming this question is going to come a little later, doing other measures to kind of close the digital divide. And then students participate in live learning sessions 2 times per week with their teachers. So in addition to included in the lesson plans are times that they can log into Zoom with their teacher and have a live learning interaction.
Yeah, and I did an interview with Dr. Vitti last week. We're going to be rolling that out this week. And he talked about, you know, all of the heavy lifting that had to be done by the school system. Again, and no matter what school system you're talking about, this was on a dime. Everyone had to adjust, and not just the students. I mean, it's not just the teachers in the school system, but the parents and students had to adjust immediately as well. Ms. Bowles, how has, it's one thing to hear the plans being rolled out, but it's another thing to experience it as a parent, and you, Reagan, as a student. How are you all seeing any of the challenges or maybe even benefits of this distance learning that we're seeing that's now being implemented?
So one of the benefits that I see is kids enriched and keeping them engaged, so that they don't forget the information that they learned when they were in school. But some of the challenges are when it did first roll out, it was a misunderstanding with the work. So they can get on to get their lesson, but I was under the impression that the assignments that were online, the assignments that they were supposed to complete, I didn't know that they had to have the packet. I thought that that was the work that they were supposed to complete. So it was giving us a hard time turning it in. And then finally, when I did speak with the teachers and they let me know, hey, you gotta go get a packet, I went and picked up the packet. But then it's like, okay, now they're doing the packet, they're doing the papers, but how do they turn them in? So it's like you on Microsoft Teams and they want you to do the work, but then you gotta go to Dojo, take a picture, turn it in, and things like that. That just makes it a little complicated. And then, with my 5-year-old, he doesn't really know how to navigate it.
Reagan, you have anything you want to add? How is the online learning, the distance learning going for you? I mean, I know it's kind of hard not being in the classroom with the actual physical teacher, and this doesn't replace having a physical teacher in front of you, but how have you been able to navigate the lessons? How have you been doing?
Navigating through the lessons is pretty easy for me because on Teams there is a thing where they actually give us lessons and it's a PDF or PNG, which are pictures, and then have the packet, then we can just do it in there, and then we take a picture and then we do it at work and from device. And I think it's pretty easy, but it would be easier if we were at school and they actually gave us a paper and we could actually hand it back to them instead of taking a picture and doing all of this.
Yeah, I mean, so we're talking again about changing everything on a dime and being able to just react to this pandemic that we certainly didn't expect to hit the American shores the way that it did. But we did talk a little bit about this digital divide, and we know that there is a challenge as it relates to students who have connectivity and have devices and those who don't. I know that there's been a major push by the nonprofits as well as the school systems to help close at least that digital digital divide, but there's still going to be some learning loss, as we know. Is that something that concerns the principals that are here, either one of you?
That is going to be interesting, but that's something that we face every summer. We call it the summer slip. We are actually doing it a little bit different at DPSCD. We are following our schedule for the elementary schools. We're following our actual schedule. So we're on every day at the time that they usually do it. We also have PE. The only issue that we have right now is the digital divide. And I'm super happy that that's going to come to a close, because I think this is going to change nationally, globally, how education is done. With all the interesting things that are coming up about this pandemic and it not being over and it's scheduled to return, I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but certainly it's something to consider. The only issue that we have had thus far is the digital divide. And once that is done, I think that we will be accustomed to digital learning. It has been a tremendous issue for us, because I only have like 19% of my kids that are on. Once that's taken care of though, once that is fixed, this is going to be a go for certainly you cannot replace a classroom teacher. There's just no way to do it. But this will kind of be an extension, in my opinion, of what we can already provide during the day. being able to help kids at night with homework, being able to make sure that parents understand what it is that they're doing in school. It's going to be an advantage at the end. It's going to be an additional way that we can help families. So yes, there's going to be some slip, but we also have programs like iReady that meet kids where they are. Once they can get on, they will get the lessons that are programmed just for them. So again, it's going to be an advantage in the long run.
So Principal Wills, we're talking about potentially 6 months of kids being out of school, physically in a classroom. And the work that they are being presented, I don't think the work's being graded at this point. How concerned are you that because you have some parents who are more engaged than others, you have some students who, and again, this is no different really than in the classroom setting, but you have parents who are not as engaged as others. You have some who don't have the technology and the ability to get up to speed on the tech world. We have challenges ourselves, those of us who are in the professional atmosphere. And you have these children who just, look at this as, 6 months of no school, which, as a kid, I probably would have loved as well. How concerning is it for you when you look at this possibility of 6 months? We talked during the summer of a 2-month learning loss and those challenges. Now we're talking potentially 6 months. And realistically speaking, those who have the least, who can least afford it will probably be the ones who will be most affected by this. How concerning is that for you?
Well, anytime that you talk about learning or learning time being lost as principals, I think that's probably at the top of our concern list, right, Principal Scott? I mean, like that is the thing that will cause us to lose sleep at night. So I think that the way that we are trying to tackle that, in addition to getting devices into families' hands, we have been having consistently anywhere from a 42 to 48% participation rate digitally. And what we're finding is that it's 50 to 72% in grades K through 4, but it's much lower in grades 5 through 8. So what I'm concerned about is that, and we've been discussing why we think the participation rates are lower in grades 5 through 8. I think there are a number of factors. I think one is that students, when they get to grade 5, they are physically more able to take care of themselves than they are in grades K through 4. And so their parents are, just kind of saying, hey, they are handling themselves, which they probably are, but there may not be the same level of accountability from their parent that you still have school. And so I think that is one piece of the puzzle. I think another piece of the puzzle is 5th through 8th graders just they're at the developmental place where they love to be at school for the social aspect of it. And so even though, like now we're having a Zoom and there is some social, emotional piece with Zoom, it is not the same as being in proximity with your friends. So I think that I would assume that my students are struggling with some of the feelings of isolation that come with not being able to go to school every day. So I am, to answer your question, I'm very concerned about any potential learning loss. I think that our school, as well as all schools, are doing everything within their power to mitigate that opportunity for learning to mitigate the loss and provide opportunities for learning to continue. And as of right now, we're planning for summer school. We don't know whether or not we will be allowed to be in the building. So summer school may also be digitally, but that's another way that students could engage in continuing learning throughout the summer. And we constantly, and I'm sure Principal Scott does this as well, are talking about read. And we have access to books outside of the school. We have a little free library right outside of our school that we keep stocked. So if anyone wants to come there to get books, they can do that. We provide options for reading online that kids can do. We have 2 reading interventionists at our school who have an Instagram site called At Those Reading Ladies, and they read books aloud every day. Kids can go on at any time that's convenient for them. So we are constantly offering opportunities for reading, teaching reading, listening to books, because we feel like that is a major thing that will help prevent the learning loss.
So I want to pivot just a little bit to standardized tests. So this year, the standardized tests were eliminated, weren't during this particular school year. Do you think that that is something that right now should be contemplated moving forward, and something more in terms of a system where you would base the children's learning on what they actually know and not on a test? What do you think about that, Principal Scott?
You know, I'm not a big supporter of standardized tests. It's something that is mandated. I understand the logic behind it, but I've also always believed that poor children who are invisible to a lot of people in the world, it's always biased anyway against them. And so moving forward in this kind of situation is going to cause us to think about things like standardized tests. And I think that's exactly where everyone is going. That's why we have the programs like iReady and some of the other things, some of the other programs that meet kids right where they are, find out what their deficiencies are, and have individual learning plans that teachers can follow. And then you have your academic interventionist and those new roles that we have at the school that are providing great assistance for that. This particular instance, if there were no digital divide again, they could take the weekly tests or the programs that we have, concentrate on where they are, and give them some serious individual assistance outside of the school, in addition to helping parents. So I don't really, I'm hoping that we can do something different about the standardized test. Although I understand why it's there, I'm not a big supporter of it because I think it's already a divisive concept for people of color and for those that are underprivileged. So.
Yeah, so I think it's called mastery assessment, is when you are able to more assess determine what the students actually have learned from the materials that's been covered, as opposed to a standardized test. Ms. Bowles, how do you feel about the possibility of eliminating these standard tests? Because I can only imagine when Reagan is preparing for these standardized tests, how crazy life is in that moment, as opposed to dealing with the day-to-day schoolwork. You're now focused on these particular tests. What's your thoughts on the state of Michigan and maybe even the entire country getting rid of these standardized tests and getting more towards identifying and learning overall, what does the child know about that subject?
I don't think that, I think that they should keep it. Really, I don't know too much about what they do because I know that my kid does really well on those tests. But you know, throughout the year, she's had the privilege of having really great teachers over the last few years. So I've seen the development with or without tests. So
it sounds like you're engaged and involved. And you got to, you know, the most important element of this is parents. You know,
Right, that's right.
That plays a big part. I think stay on their children about taking their work serious, because I always tell Reagan, you know, the way that you work now is going to affect your future. So go ahead and knock out these tests and get the grades. So mommy won't have to pay for college. You can get scholarships. You can afford all of these opportunities. So go ahead, do what you got to do, and that's what she does. Knocks it out the park.
Awesome.
You know, Councilman, if we even the playing field, and we take care of some of the inequities that are just natural for us right now, we're not even going to have to worry about that. You have a great curriculum that's aligned. you have a great staff member, a great educator that's engaged with that student, and we have parents that are fully engaged with the educational process, you're not even gonna have to worry about standardized tests, in my opinion, as a parent. It's gonna happen naturally.
So Principal Wills, we know that there are resources that are out there for parents who may or may not participate in the activities of their children. Do you think that there's additional tools that may allow them to be stronger at what they do? Essentially, I mean, the reality is right now, a lot of parents are their children's primary educator outside of, in front of the computer and the various programs electronically. But do you believe that teachers, educators will be more appreciated following this pandemic? Whether you talk about politicians, let's be honest, or were you talking about parents? Do you think that the reality will be different for those who educate the children? I mean, their important roles in society is tremendous.
I think it can't help. And I think this is perhaps one of the advantages that Principal Scott was talking about. It allows people to have a different perspective. And I think anytime our point of view shifts, we may or may not change how we feel about something, but at least at the very minimum, it enables us to look at it from a different lens. And so from that standpoint, yes, because I've heard parents say, wow, I only have my one child at home and I'm having a hard time getting them to sit here and focus on the lesson. How do you do it with 25?
That's
So
right.
I think those kind of things are really helping people to understand that when you walk into a classroom and you see everyone learning and it looks like it's real easy, but it is not easy. It is a skilled profession for a reason, because it takes a lot of training, a lot of practice, and a lot of dedication. So yes, I think so. I came up with a slogan for you, Mr. Tate, so that you could have some tips to share with parents, okay? Because of what I've been thinking about and what I've been hearing a lot is there's a lot of feelings of feeling overwhelmed for everybody. Everybody feels a little overwhelmed, not just parents who are now at home teaching their kids, but also for teachers who are learning all new skills.
That's right.
With no training in advance, because again, we go back to it happened boom overnight. Like Principal Scott said, she's doing Zoom meetings all the time. So am I. I mean, I am still working. I'm at home, but I'm working full days every day and I find myself feeling so tired because it's such a different modality that I'm used to. So what I think is really important for anybody, but also in particular our parents to remember, is this acronym CHILL. CHILL, it's going to be okay. So here's what CHILL stands for. For C, have confidence in yourself that you can do this. For H, help your children, but don't do the work for them. For I, it's okay to acknowledge that this is hard because we can do hard things. L is learn together. So just in the same way that your child is learning school online, you're learning with them how to do school online and how to do this at home. And lastly, let's all love each other in spite of the challenges that this creates, because I think in loving one another, we can have a little grace and say, hey, we're going to get through this together. So that's my acronym. My tips for everyone during this time is CHILL. It's going to be okay.
I like that.
I love it. I love
Like
it.
that.
I love it.
A new version of chill.
A new version of CHILL.
So Miss Bowles, how are you chilling? I mean, when it comes, I mean, you have multiple children, and not just this awesome student that we see before us. How do you keep their divided attention on their studies during the time frame that you have? And I know it's a little bit distracting, with all of the other things. You have television, you have, even just looking outside the window at the birds, whatever it is. It could be food, you name it. All of this is accessible to them right in their face. how are you managing being your children's primary educator at this moment?
You took my answer. Food. I have to bribe the little one. Make sure I keep the snacks, because sometimes the snacks keep them going. She's pretty good. I don't have to too much worry about her. She sets her alarm so that, because the times are broken up, she's got math at 10, but ELA is not until 12. So in between, she might draw. She sets her alarm. The little one, I do have to bribe him with snacks to get him to stay focused. It is hard. And I definitely look at teachers way different. That's definitely a skill. It's not easy. It's not easy, and I only have two. So I can just imagine what a teacher goes through in the classroom to keep them focused, keep them engaged, and then when they're doing their work, pay attention, to see that they actually learn from the lesson, that the teacher was explaining. So, yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's getting better, but it's definitely a challenge.
Councilman Tate, I've heard from so many parents as we go around and we deliver packets and we have those that are online, they have a great respect for what educators do. We have lost, in my opinion, in our country specifically, we have not really valued teachers. And it has shown in the morale of educators and administrators. I'm sure Principal Willis will agree with me with that. As we move forward, that's another advantage that I'm seeing. They understand what we do every day. We have kids longer than parents do while they're awake. And we have to provide a service for them with multiple kids at multiple different levels. So when I say that this is an advantage, it's going to be huge if we go into this with the right frame of mind. Not only, there's no replacement for a teacher, no replacement. Books don't teach children. People teach children. Books are a resource. Computers are a resource. Videos are a resource, but people teach children. And so there's no replacement for that. But the way this can be extended, if we level the playing field and we make sure that everybody has a device in their hand and we're able to extend the learning and they're able to call their teachers, maybe there's office hours in the evening, and they can explain to the parent or the children what it is that they're doing, you'll get a better connection with parents. You'll get a better connection with those kids who may not speak up in class. Maybe they could call their teacher at night and say, hey, can you explain this to me? The homework hotline has been a big hit for DPSCD. So when I talk about the advantages of this pandemic, which is really a very negative thing in a lot of, depending on the way you think about it, health-wise, it's a horrible, horrible thing to go through. But what we're learning as a community is that there are so many more advantages about learning the things that we're learning right now. We are connecting to families, just the wellness checks. We do a wellness check once a week with families. The families appreciate that. They're getting a tighter bond with their teacher. The kids are seeing the parent and the staff member, the teacher talk, which is huge. They're enjoying seeing their mom or their dad and their teacher communicate. A lot of times parents can't come to parent-teacher conference. Our attendance for parent-teacher conference is low. Right now, we have parent-teacher conference every week. In addition to that, it's not only my teachers that are calling their kids. Because I have such a large staff, I have support staff in the building that are making those wellness checks. And so they're getting to know all the people in the building that help to make the building run. It's not just just like running a city. People think it's just the mayor or it's just the councilman. There's a lot of different moving parts to organizing and operating a school building. And so the parents and the students are getting to talk to and communicate with different people that make that building run. And they're gaining respect for what we do. And so I'm enjoying that part. I hate the pandemic. I hate what's going on. I hate the death toll. but I'm enjoying seeing another way of looking at that, putting it a new perspective on it, as Principal Willis said. And so I'm enjoying that part. It's going to give us some serious advantages after this is all over.
Yeah, we always, you know, in this negative situation, you always have to look at the challenges, but then also the opportunities as well. And what has come out of this, it sounds like, is a renewed, again, respect for the profession of being an educator.
Absolutely.
And what you all do. But I do want to make a transition to what life is going to look like after this quarantine period. I mean, that is now the big question. Everywhere you look and you hear, people are looking to reopen the economy. And the only way that you can effectively do that is, one, of course, with vaccines and testing and, you know, all of those technical things dealing with the health, but then also schools, because you all, again, as you said, you all have their children, these individuals who want to open up the economy right now, you have their children longer in the daytime than they do when they're awake. You're looking at some countries, they've already begun to open up. They had quarantine and they've opened up. I'm looking here, Denmark, they began back in April. Germany, same thing. Israel, Netherlands, a number of countries are opening back up. And we know that eventually we're going to do the same. What do you believe that school classroom learning will look like moving into the future? I understand, I'm sure there's a mixture of blended learning, but what do you envision, either one of the principals, what do you envision school classroom education looking like whenever we're allowed to begin classroom education again?
Well, I'll start, and I'm sure Principal Scott and I are probably in a similar situation with this, where, you know, as principals, sometimes people think we get to make all the decisions in a school, and that's actually not the reality of the situation. We ensure that the decisions are carried out with fidelity, but we are definitely not the final decision maker. So when you think about entire systems that in education have been in place for many, many years, and it's always looked like this for years. It's always looked like kids go to school, let's just say 8 o'clock, they get out at 3 o'clock. It's looked that way for years. One of the things being tossed around is, well, what if we need to cut our class sizes in half so that social distancing can continue to happen? Well, the first time I heard that was a few weeks ago. They were talking about it on the news with California. And as a principal, my mind immediately said, ha, cut class sizes in half. Do you understand what you have to do that? And there's literally only two choices. Either you double your staff and your space, which no one that I know of has the capacity to do, because how are you going to build a whole nother facility equivalent to the size that you currently have to double your space in like 2 months? No one can do that. Or you reduce the time that students go to school by half, and it becomes either like an AM, PM situation, an every other day situation, something like that. So I think that it would be premature to say for sure what will happen, because we don't know. A lot of the decisions that educators make are based on larger decisions from the recommendations of the health department and the government about what is mandated. So we will first obviously all follow the mandates, but then I think, you know, our networks or our districts will then give us the next steps of guidance, and we will go from there. But I think what will be critical in my mind for us as principals and as teachers to do is to really continue to use the time that we have right now to build connections with families, continue to educate parents about how important and critical their role is as a partner. It's always been important and critical. It's just more so now because kids are with their parents more as opposed to being with us more. And so therefore, in order for the education to happen at the same level, we really have to build that partnership and work hard for that. I think other than that, I don't know that there's anything that we can actually predict at this point.
It's a hard prediction, but if I can just a second that we cut our classrooms health-wise to be conscious of the social distancing. If we cut our classes in half, how much more can be done with our students individually? But what would that take? First of all, we have to consider the how we pay the people that work inside the school. It's based on the per pupil expenditure that we get from the state. And so nationally, if we value education more and we put more money into education, we could possibly cut our classrooms in half. Everyone has been arguing this for years. Class sizes are too big. Class sizes are too big. Class sizes are too big. But let's be honest. We need to have our enrollment, because per pupil expenditure is about $8,000, in order to have all these other resource staff members, the support staff, and some of the things that we can offer in schools. We need to make sure that we have a good size enrollment. And so, but if nationally, if we value more and we didn't have to worry about the business side of it, cutting our class sizes in half would do just what I talked about when you first started, Councilman. The kids that are online and they're talking to their teachers, they're getting some individual instruction that they really, because they're having face-to-face time with that certified instructor that they may not get inside of the classroom with 30. But now that they have just 15, you can imagine the quality is just better. So we have to look at this on a national basis, in my opinion, and decide what's really important. Look at what has happened with the pandemic already. You named all those countries that have opened back up. But what happened with the United States is we didn't behave very well. We did not behave very well. We became the worst. We became the worst. Well, it's my opinion that in other countries we have seen where they value education more than the United States. And so until we change that mindset, we're going to end up with some serious issues and that we're experiencing right now. How dare in 2020, everyone at every school doesn't have a device. This is the age of technology. A shame in itself. It's a shame. And so once we change that mindset and we pay educators what they should get anyway, and when we cut those class sizes in half, we make sure all the resources are there. That's one of the big things that Dr. Vitti did when he got here. He made sure that we had counselors and social workers, academic interventionists, because they're needed. He repurposed the money so that he could do what we knew that needed to be done a long time ago. How long, Principal Willis, have we been talking about class sizes are too big? But you have 30 kids and every single kid is on a different level. Right. So what did Dr. Vitti do and his team? They put in things like iReady to make sure that not only the teacher, but a device, a program is meeting that kid exactly where they are, because we all know that they come at different levels all the time. And it's very, very hard on an instructor. But you cut it in half and you have 15, then you have 15 different levels. I mean, that is just going to be better. It's going to be more quality. It's going to be less hassle. And you're going to get a chance to reach out to that parent even more so than what you do now. And so it's not that they're ignoring parents, and it's not that the parents are ignoring us. It's just that there's so many kids in there, and there has been such a lack of respect for the field of education that this is where we've landed. And so again, I'm going to go back to this may be an opportunity for us to make sure that everybody understands just how important this is, just how important it is for them to be involved in their child's education, just how important it is for us to make sure that we have appropriate class sizes, and that all kids, no matter whether they're Black, white, Chinese, or whatever, and whether no matter what their the economic background, wherever they come from, it shouldn't matter when you're talking about educating kids. It's a shame to say that we've had to go around and drive packets around to our kids because we knew they had no internet. They had no laptop, I've done over 110 drive-bys right now, just taking packets to people who didn't have the access in order to learn online with their instructor.
Yeah, so we absolutely again have to use this as a moment to re-envision what we see the educational system looking like in this entire country. Some of the things I've heard about in terms of what this new school year may look like. Of course, again, as we talked about blended learning in class, a mixture of in class as well as remote learning, but then also having staggered days that students have to go to school. So maybe a Tuesday, a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then the other students are rotating. Some I've heard about classrooms now being held in gymnasiums as opposed to, and then you have in certain situations, students staying in the same classroom, but teachers rotating as opposed to the students. So there are a number of ideas that are being bounced around, but like you said, nothing has really been solidified as of yet, at least in this country. I want to go to Ms. Bowles before we wrap up. I mean, the other issue is also the cleanliness and the sanitation, how we can make sure that the classrooms are properly sanitized. We know the kids touch everything. Kids love to congregate. They even touch each other and hug each other. We know that even though the science says that children don't fall, at least those younger children, don't fall ill as rapidly as older individuals, we do know that they can carry the virus and either carry it to themselves and back to their families or even to teachers. What would it take for you? I mean, I know I've heard from some parents, there's a fear, of course, starting right back up and sending kids back to classes. Is that something that you contemplate? Are you thinking about what that first day of school will look like when they say, Reagan can now come back to school? Are you going to be one of those first parents that's going to allow Reagan to come back to school? Or do you have some apprehension?
I do have some apprehension. Just like all of the places opening back up. It's like when Michigan opens back up, I'm not ready to just go back out there. I want to see what's going to happen first. I wouldn't want to just, I'm very scared. But one thing that I do like, that they did have in the beginning of school, they would have each child's parent bring disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer and things like that. But I think maybe they should maybe have them to keep it to themselves. And for the kids who cannot afford it, maybe the school have some kind of funding where they can purchase items for the children to remain safe, and so they're not, passing, things along, because kids do pass things along. My younger child caught the flu twice during the school year. My bigger child, she's not, so bad, but yes, the children pass things along quite easily. So that is one of my fears. I wouldn't want them to go back too fast, and then
We're going to have to be cognizant of things that we need to think about anyway, every day. We need to think about being our health issues no matter what. We know about Principal Willis, the chickenpox and mumps and how it's, and the flu, and that happens every year. These are things that we should already think about. We're going to think about it more because the pandemic has forced us to pay attention to things that we kind of brushed over. We brushed over all of the things that we're talking about, Councilman, but it's going to make, first of all, I don't want to be back in the building if I don't feel safe. I don't want my teachers back in the building. So the parents are going to have to trust that we don't want to be there either if we're not safe. So trust me, I'm looking at my custodial company with 4 eyes. Are you? I'm already, since I go in the building every day already, I already look at everything. And it's going to force me to be more cognizant about something that I should have been more cognizant about anyway. And so I think that if the parents know that we're walking in, because remember, we have children, we have children, we have families. I have an 86-year-old father and 5 nieces and nephews that I work with every day. I don't want to be in a building where I'm going to be unsafe either. And so we're going to have to make sure that we trust one another. All of us are feeling the same way, because we're also, outside of being an educator, we're also a mother and a father and a niece and a granddaughter and a daughter. I want to walk into a clean environment, and I'm going to be really nitpicky now. But these are things that we should have been more cognizant about in the beginning, but we get very comfortable. We get very comfortable as a nation. We get comfortable about everything. And so now we're going to exercise some things that we should have been exercising anyway. We're going to look at door handles a little bit different. When I go around and I check my building, I'm looking at doorknobs. I'm looking at desks. Did you wipe the desk down today? I'm looking at bathrooms, even with a keener eye than I did before, because I also don't want to be sick. But I also know that as an educator, I need kids back in school. Digital learning cannot happen forever. I'm at a pre-K 5. They need their social skills. They need to learn how to share and how to care, and they need to develop empathy. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is to be around other children and other human beings. We can't stay separate forever. This is a great meeting, but I'd love to be in the room with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot replace a teacher. You cannot replace a person. And parents have to go back to work. You talk about the tracking system that they've been doing in California for quite some time. But can you imagine a single parent? I was a single parent with 2 kids that were 6 years apart. If I had to send my kids to school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it would be very difficult. It would be very, very difficult. I was a single parent. My kids were far apart. One was in high school, one was in elementary school. And it's going to be an adjustment for everyone, but we're going to have to think about those kinds of things. And so it's not going to be easy by no stretch of the imagination, but we are evolving. We're being forced to think about some things that we should have been thinking about, number one. There's no reason in 2020 where there's not a device in every child's hand. It's ridiculous. And number two, our old heads like myself are being forced to make sure that we keep up with technology. We learn Zoom, we learn Teams, we learn all these things that we're learning. And because to me, this is just going to be an extension of what we already provide anyway.
Principal Wills, I'll let you have the last word. I see you have something you want to add to it.
Well, what I just want to say that I think one thing I really like the way that Principal Scott has framed like the concept of advantages through this process. And I think one thing that I would be really remiss if I didn't mention is that one thing that happens any time of crisis is that communities start to come together.
Oh, yeah.
And what I'm finding, Councilman Tate, even just having you facilitating this conversation from principals that normally don't actually get to talk to each other, along with a parent from another school, I've really enjoyed the process. And for us, a Detroit Leadership Academy, because we're not part of DPSCD, wasn't part of that multi-million-dollar grant that came to get devices to kids. But that didn't stop us because our network continued to develop partnerships to get large-scale funding for all the schools that they are responsible for. But personally at our school, we've partnered with the Gathering Church, which has been a great partnership for us for the last couple of years. They've done lots of things, filled in lots of gaps for us that we just don't have funding to do. They provided us with 60 tablets to put into the hand of kids. And then we partnered with the ITDRC, which is the Information Technology Disaster Resource Center, who provided us with 50 devices to put into the hands of families. And that also ITDRC, and I shared with your office as well, Councilman Tate, they came and installed hotspots at various community places for free, partnering with areas in the community that would benefit multiple people. So now my school now has a hotspot. They installed the hardware for free and they provided the hardware for free so that within 100 to 150 yards of our parking lot, people can come and use Wi-Fi. So as the weather warms up, I see that even being more of an advantage because kids like to get out. We have a lot of walkers at our school. They could always come to the school and use the hotspot there now. So I think that this season has given us an opportunity to really come together as partners and meet the needs of one another, and see each other. So when she speaks about the skills of empathy and caring and kindness, it's forcing adults to also look at one another and how can we help each other in this time? What can we do to lift each other up? We have, one thing I'm grateful for is that when Principal Scott spoke about the inequities, as principals in the community, we've known about this forever, and we've probably broken our throats talking about it forever. But until something like a crisis came, nothing was happening necessarily. It took a crisis for our students to finally start to get what they've needed for years, some form of equity. Like, bring it on. We need that. And then I could get on a soapbox and talk about the other things we need, but I will try to restrain myself.
We'll have you back. We're going to have you back for sure.
But I mean, those are, so, the community coming together is a huge, beautiful thing to be a part of.
Principal Wills, I mentioned that you were going to have the last word. I'm going to have to go back on my word and actually give the last word to Reagan. Reagan, a quick question for you. Last question. When schools open back up, Mom allows you to go back to class and go back to school, what is the thing that you're looking forward to the most?
The thing I most look forward to, seeing my friends.
Yeah, I can understand that, especially being away from them for so long. Well, we want to thank you all. I mean, I know Count Day is going to look a whole lot different moving forward. That's going to be a challenge, again, as we talk about parents and administrators and teachers who are not necessarily going to feel comfortable going right back until we get this situation completely under hand. We've got a lot of conversation that we've got to have with those elected officials who, wield the purse strings of the schools and the funding. A lot of conversations have got to be had regarding education in this country, because clearly what was happening wasn't working. So going back to normal, even though people want to have some sense of normalcy, going back to normal, it wasn't working. So we got to actually use this as an opportunity to make things much, much better. Thank you all for joining us. Principal Melissa Scott, Coleman A. Young Elementary. We also have Aaron Willis, Principal Willis, Detroit Leadership Academy, Miss Shante Bowles, and Reagan at Edison Elementary. You all please stay safe, stay strong, and do whatever you can to continue this conversation of education, and bring me in on it, and allow me to assist you in whatever I can do. All right.
Councilman, I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody, but I really appreciate the fact that you just wanted to have this conversation.
Me too.
Absolutely.
So we need more of our political leaders to want to do something like this. This is the first time that I've heard anyone doing something like this. And this is what Principal Willis, and I'm sure Mrs. Bowles, this is what we need. We need people to just care. We need to show empathy and say, hey, what's going on in the schools? This is the future. Reagan is the future.
That's
and
right.
The moment we do that, and the moment we have more politicians like yourself to do things like this, we're going to grow and we're going to evolve, and there's no stopping us after that. So thank you so much for just doing it.
Yep.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you all, again, please stay safe.
Thank you.
You as well.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Principal Willis, I'm coming to meet you.
I know, I can't wait. I was thinking the same thing.
All right, have a good one, Ms.
Awesome.
Bowles.
You guys too. Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.